The next section that I'd like to discuss on the seller lead sheet is the price section. So we're going to scroll down here and we're going to take a look. There's a few questions here in the price. And these questions are very important. It's also very important how you ask these questions. And anytime you talk about price, you have to be very cognizant of the words that you're saying and your body language and so on and so forth. So up until this time point, we've already gathered the mortgage information. So we have an idea a lot of times by popping on to Zillow and running the Zestimate. And let's say the Zestimate, it came back at 225,000 for a property, and I gathered the information from John about the property, and I figured he owes about 100 and let's say $32,000 on this property. So I know there's some equity just based on the difference between the Zestimate and what he owes. I also know from my earlier role plays with myself is that he's motivated. He's behind on payments and he's looking to move. And so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume or make some light assumptions that John's willing to sell this property for what he owes. And you might say, well, man, that could offend him, and it very well could. If he didn't have any mortgage on the property or any debt on the property, then absolutely, I wouldn't assume he's going to sell the property, for what he owes because he doesn't owe anything, right? And so I'm not going to insult the seller, but if there's a spread and there's a high level of motivation, I would ask the question like this. I would say, John, based on everything that I've heard from you and everything you've told me, it sounds to me like your number one goal is to get out from underneath the debt that you're currently under and to not lose this house to foreclosure. Is that accurate? Right? If he were to say yes, then I know I'm going to be positioning price at or right around what he owes. Now, at that point, he may say, oh, no, I'm looking to sell my house for X. Or, oh, no, I definitely, the house is definitely worth more than I owe. And so I'm definitely looking to get money out of this deal, right? So based on the tone of his answer, I can kind of gauge where I'm going. But I want to work from what he owes up. I don't want to ask the question, John, tell me, what are you looking to sell your house for? Because then John is going to say, well, 180,000 or 200,000 or who knows, 225,000, right? And that number may be based on what he thinks it's worth, or it may be based on what his neighbor's house sold for, or so on and so forth. Now, he may say that anyway, no matter what I say here, but I'm always going to work up and make some light assumptions that his number one goal is not price, but it's to get out from underneath the debt and to have a smooth transition and so from selling the house. So let's say I said that and John said, yeah, that is one of my top goals. Okay. Right. Well, then at that point, I'd say, well, John, if I could make you an all cash offer and close on your timeline, and I know you want to close quickly and that's important to you, what would be your bottom line price, right? So that's a good way, no matter what the seller says or the situation, that's a good way to ask the question here, right? Now, if John is really, really motivated, right? I would say, now, John, would you be willing to sell your house? Let's say he was really motivated and he's behind. I'd say, now, John, from everything I've heard, it sounds like if we could come in and just relieve you of this debt and buy the house at or around the value of what you owe, that would work for you. Is that correct? Right? Now, he may object. He may object violently at that point, or he may say, yeah, well, I definitely want to get a little bit more than that. And then what I would do is I would ask him why. I'd say, okay, what were you planning on using that money for? Because I don't want just a lump sum figure. I want to factor in, because a lot of times it's the same thing. It's, enough money for a down payment on my next house, pay off a little bit of credit card debt, things of that nature when you're dealing with motivated sellers. And so I'd like to work that number up. And we may factor that number to be, $10,000. So if we were to come in with an offer of, $142,000, that's something that would work for you, right? I want to work up, right? Now, if you're not getting anywhere in this questioning, then you just come out with this question right here. If I can make an all cash offer, which is very different from what are you looking to sell the house for, right? Because it's positioning your offer in a good light, right? If I can make you an all cash offer and close in your timeline, what would be your bottom line price? And so John, if John throws out a number, let's say he throws out, 180,000 would be my bottom line. I'd say, John, how flexible is that price? Right? Even though I've asked the bottom line, I'm still going to try to negotiate. Remember, I haven't made an offer. I'm just trying to find out where he's at. And he may, say, well, that is my bottom line, which is most likely what he'll say, after he's giving you a price. But he may even come, well, I could be maybe a little flexible if you could come in with cash and close, in 21 days or whatever, is important to him. So you may get him down to that number a little bit right there. So you might be, well, what does that mean? Would that be, 10, 15, well, no, 175,000, he might say. Okay, well, at least I'm starting there as opposed to where he was, previously was 180,000, right? Now, sometimes I'll ask that question, how did you establish that number? Generally, I'll only ask it if I don't feel like the number's that good. Meaning if this might work, at 180, now he's at 175, I'm not going to ask that, right, at this point, because I'm going to know, okay, he's in my possible zone of possible agreement, because the after repair value I'm thinking might be 250, based on the way he's described the repairs, it might be 25. So I may not be willing to offer him $175,000, but at least he's at least he's being somewhat realistic about price, and when I show up in person I can negotiate maybe a greater discount. So these are things that are important. Now, if he's higher, I'm going to say, how did you establish that number? Because at this point, it's going to be very revealing. He might say, well, a realtor I met with. So now I know he's met with a realtor, and a realtor's given him a CMA or a competitive market analysis. Or he may say, the neighbor's house next door sold for X, Y, and Z. Well, then I definitely want to pull that comparable to find out, because that's something I'm going to have to deal with in the negotiation. So the reason I ask that is to find out. Now, I'm going to find out if I have competition later on, so that's why it's not vital to ask it here. But generally, I'll only ask it if he's high on the number. So those are the price numbers. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is what if for some reason John doesn't want to give you a price? Well, at this point, I want him to commit to a number. So I'd say, John, I can understand that fact. Please understand, though, that I get a lot of calls from sellers every single week looking to sell their property, and I just need to make sure we're in the same ballpark. So I won't hold you to the number, but give me a ballpark range of where you'd be at. And a lot of times that number will be fleshed out. Sometimes, though, a number won't be fleshed out, and then you're just going to have to come and sometimes maybe lead with the first offer, right? But that's the general look at how to ask the price questions.